Welcome to Peak Life. I'm Amanda Jackson with the Chesapeake Public Libraries, and my guest today is Suzanne Davis. Suzanne, you have a lot of initials behind your name. You are highly accomplished, graduated from Regent University with a master's in clinical therapy and law. Can you tell me a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. I'd love to. Again, I'm honored to be here. So thank you so much, Amanda, for having me on today. Just a little bit of background. I love Regent so much that I went back for 2 degrees. So I have 2 master's degrees, one in community counseling and also in law, which is in human rights and rule of law.
Great. And I also see that your counseling, your company has a play therapy. So what's play therapy?
I'm so glad you asked. Well, I am a licensed professional counselor and a registered play therapist. So essentially what play therapy is, it helps children and even adults too to be able to express emotions and thoughts that, other than just kind of through talk therapy. So it's using kind of toys, it can be games, it can be art, in order to express what's happening on the inside. So the toys become essentially the words, the play becomes the communication. And so from there, then it's communicated through play.
That's fantastic. So you wrote this book when Rona came to my town, and I've read it. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
I have to tell you that as a librarian, authors are like our rock stars. So you are super famous to me right now. How much of the work that you did in counseling led to this book? How much of that inspired your work?
It inspired it because I wanted to validate children and obviously families through the experience through COVID-19, because ultimately this is experience that we all have gone through. It's a shared experience, and so how do you make sense out of something that doesn't make sense? So I wanted to be able to validate, the emotions and thoughts for families and children through what they have gone through.
That makes sense, because for little ones, it would be hard for them to understand why I can't go to grandma's like I used to, or we go every week, and now my whole life has changed. So tell us a little bit about the book. It kind of follows that.
Yes, you're right. And this actually was, I had written it probably back last June, give or take between June and July. I actually did some research trying to look for a book to help children, and everything that I found was very fear-based. In other words, that, creating Rona or either COVID-19 as a way of kind of fear, or I wanted to kind of inspire children and empower them to where they feel somewhat in control. And so that's kind of what inspired this, from their experiences, from helping them to feel more empowered.
Right, and that brings me to, there's a story in your book about worry. So was that part of the story? Now, was that a story that you had heard growing up, or was that a story you just made up on the fly? Because it's fantastic.
Thank you so much. It was actually a story that was just needed to be in there. It wasn't something that, that my parents had told me, but it was something that internally that I knew that this needed to kind of help conceptualize what worry is for children. Because, with an emotion, how do you kind of make sense out of what that emotion is? Yes, you feel it, but what does it look like? And so it gives a personification of what worry is.
Right, and sometimes that worry, when you get to it, is much smaller than we anticipated it was going to be.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is my librarian hat. How much do books help us as parents going through dealing with difficult subjects and scary things, especially for little ones? Like these books for elementary school and preschoolers, that's a really hard age to explain difficult topics to.
You're right, and that's where books come into place, because then it helps explain to the concepts that in their language. Because obviously for children, we learn, not by words, but we weren't learned from pictures. And so having the pictures along with the words to explain, oh, I'm not alone in this, that I am experiencing this, and somebody else is also experiencing this too.
And in the back, you have a whole section where we can draw and we can write. What do you hope families are using that for? Talk to me about, as a mom, if I'm sitting down with my 5-year-old, how do I use that and get the most out of this book?
Part of it, I want, for children to be able to make it their own. So part of it, as a parent, to be able to use it as a way for them to express. There is a section for children to draw, and that is to draw what their worry is and to be able to make it what they want it to be. A lot of the times, with worry, because of the emotion, to be able to kind of create something that is funny or silly. So it's not so, overwhelming and kind of fearful. So it helps them to identify their emotions in a healthy way. And then also, too, to identify how they can connect with others and what encourages and empowers them.
And I think it would be a great way for us as families to sit down and talk about it together, because sometimes as parents, we want to be that really strong, no fear, no worry, we're keeping it all together, but that's not how we're feeling. So is it important for us to work through this as a family and not just let the kids like, oh, here's a place where you can draw?
Exactly. It's a way to be able to talk through some of the things that are being experienced, such as like, yeah, it makes me sad, or it makes me, worried, or it makes me angry, or, confused about certain things. And it's okay to be honest and to share certain things, with children, to say, you know what, you're not alone.
That is important. So did you always want to be an author? Did you always have in mind you were going to write a book one day?
Yes. This is something that has been on my mind for quite so many years. I didn't know that this was the kind of the direction that it was going to take, because I was thinking it would be more like an adult, form of a book instead of, working and creating a book for children. But this is where it needed to be.
Was the process of writing what you thought it was going to be? Was it easier, harder?
It was a lot easier than what I had thought for. Like I mentioned, where it was inspired, it just kind of flowed through me to where it was actually written within 2 hours.
Oh, wow. So, and then you had to find an illustrator. Tex is your illustrator. And I noticed that, shockingly, Tex is from Texas. And you're talking about COVID times, so you're not going to be able to interact with him maybe the same way another children's author would interact with her illustrator. What was that like?
It was a lot of coordinating. So ultimately, emails back and forth. Tex is actually a great family friend originally from here, from Hampton Roads. And so we were able to connect. He was on board with illustrating. This is his first children's book. He's actually a motorcycle pinstriper. So this is completely outside of his realm. And for him to take, the words that were created to make an image from it was just amazing.
That is really awesome. You imagine just the visual of a guy who is used to working on big, tough bikes, sitting down and drawing for kids. So wonderful.
Yes.
Great process, too.
Yes.
What was the hardest part about this for you?
The hardest part would probably be, seeing it all together. Because ultimately creating not just the words, but then, with the illustrations, and then seeing it put together in a book. That in itself was long, but at the same time, I am just so grateful that it came out the way that it needed to be.
Now, were you completely amped when you got the first box of the books and you opened it and they're new and your name is right on it? Were you just like over the moon?
I certainly was. It was just a surreal moment. When I saw my name on a book, I was like, this can't be happening. Is this really, really happening? And so, of course, with receiving the first author's copy, it was just overwhelming to be able to see it in print. My publishing company is Dorrance Publishing, and they did an amazing job on collecting and putting everything together.
Do you have plans for another book?
Yes, I do. Spoiler alert. I know. That is actually going to be coming out hopefully by the end of this year.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And I can't quite say what, I can certainly tell a little bit about what it's about. And it's talking about inclusivity and diversity, and to being able to celebrate differences. And that can be differences of abilities and capabilities.
I love that. It's like you're going to have a whole series on how to talk to your kids about these tough topics, but make them fun in that time that we get to share. So if I was at home and watching you right now and I wanted to write a book, or I was a kid and I wanted to be an author one day, what advice would you give me?
To continue to pursue that dream. Certainly go ahead, write down anything that inspires you, because part of it is having your voice heard, and in such a way that where you feel accomplished. And to me, anything that inspires, certainly to be able to write.
And I know that this book was a labor of love. It's not easy. It's a process that you had to go through. We talked about this. At the end of the day, there's a purpose for it. At the end of the day, you're hoping families get what? What would make this all worthwhile? All the heartache, all the nights staying up and worrying about how it was going to go. If we're sitting down, what is that moment for my family?
The main moment is making a difference. And part of it is I'm hoping the goal is making a difference in people's lives. And I hope that it will encourage and empower and inspire others.
Well, Suzanne, thank you so much. This was fantastic. It's such a beautiful book, and it's such a great way to talk about a really, really scary subject. And I can't wait to see the next book. I love this idea, inclusivity and equity. I think that's going to be great. I can't wait to talk to you again. Thank you so much for being with us today. We hope you'll pick up a copy of When Rona Came to My Town.